Hello, my name is David Biale, and I am a co-editor of the Stanford University Press series in Jewish Studies. I'm here today with Golan Moskowitz, who is the author of a book entitled Wild Visionary, Maurice Sendak in Queer Jewish Context. So Golan, thanks a lot for doing this interview. And I want to ask you, why a new book on Maurice Sendak?
Well, thank you for having me, David. And this has been a long-term project that I've been really excited about. It's a project that looks at Sendak in ways that really, I think, do more honor to his position as a queer and Jewish person. He passed away in 2012 as I was finishing my own master's program and looking for a topic for a dissertation. And it happened to be that he combined a lot of the different personal and academic questions that I bring to my work. He is a figure who was deeply marked by Holocaust losses, who grew up in an acculturating Yiddish-speaking American Jewish family in the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century, through the Great Depression, World War II, and beyond. And a figure who operated from the margins, but in ways that really impacted mainstream Jewish and American culture really significantly. So this is a project that expands on existing work that has placed Sendak as a monumental figure in American childhood and children's literature, one who brought a darker, more romantic realism to childhood, to really get at the cultural, historical, and aesthetic genesis of where that vision really came from, which I argue originates in that we can really understand that vision most fully through understanding his position as a queer and Jewish son of Eastern European Yiddish-speaking immigrants, and his the impact of the Holocaust, the Depression, and other rhythms of American history on his work.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only book in the Stanford series that I could present to my 4-year-old granddaughter, and she knew what I was talking about. That is, she knew it. She knew of Maurice Sendak, and so it does have that incredible resonance. This figure who is really such a gigantic figure in American culture, and especially for children, but also for adults. I mean, there's something about his books that speaks to all of us, I think, that touches something deep inside of us in terms of our emotional life. And I really think it's fascinating how you tie this to themes in Jewish history, to growing up as a Jew in Brooklyn, the echoes of the Holocaust, and also the fact that he comes out as a gay man, and how all of these different pieces fit together. It's a remarkable story. So can I ask you, how did you decide to do this project? I mean, this is everybody has a kind of a personal intellectual journey that brings them to a theme, and I'm curious to know what yours was.
Well, first, I really resonate with what you're saying, and I think that there's there's something about the emotional reality of existing outside of, before, or beyond a mainstream context that Sendak really accomplishes in his work in ways that, as you say, speak to adults, sometimes even more than to children, but to children as well. Many of us across generations have grown up with Where the Wild Things Are and The Night Kitchen, some of his classics, The Sign of the Rose Door. As someone who myself grew up as a sort of unusual child of an immigrant, a grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, who struggled to come into myself also as a queer person in suburban 20th century America myself. This was Sendak's work really spoke to me in my own childhood, led me, I don't want to say Sendak alone led me, but I was led to pursue visual art. I was an art major in my undergrad experience, went on to study how artists and others grapple with trauma in Jewish contexts, post-Holocaust specifically. And from there, Sendak passed away, as I mentioned, as I was finishing my master's program, looking for a topic for my doctorate program. And his work, I think, is is one that really empowers queerness and Jewishness in new ways, but not in the ways that we are familiar with in traditional historiography. He's not the typical story of an assimilated perspective, right? He's one who really spoke from the perspective of what it means to inhabit or identify with the other, the monstrous, and to occupy realms of fantasy, other worlds, parallel worlds, through which to work through dark and othered elements of history. So I think those elements really spoke to me both as an artist, as a historian interested in other marginalized voices in Jewish history, and also thinking more about the developing fields of gender and queer studies and childhood studies, which especially since the 1990s have started to grow more prolifically. I think that the way of really unlocking our understanding of Sendak, from my perspective, is to see the ways in which childhood, as it emerged in the early to mid 20th century, especially in its sort of bourgeois modern version, um, as well as Jewish history and American culture at large, were realms that that displaced Sendak as an emerging subjectivity. And I trace him through the 20th century into the 21st century as someone who constantly, continuously resisted the temptation or the pressure, the coercion to assimilate, to acculturate, uh, to give up parts of himself. And I draw parallels between the child who is forbidden to exist in the world, the queer child, the child who knows themselves to be different, to be other, to be part of something not celebrated in the mainstream culture, and the ethno-religious other, the position of Sendak's own parents. His mother immigrated as a minor around the years coming before World War I, around 1911, and never really learned English. So he emerges in a context in which both queerness and Jewishness exist for him as a position of forbidden otherness or as marginalizing otherness, but also a place of richness, of cultural richness, a means of creativity and resilience within which theatricality, elements of camp, of internal processing, turning inward to harness the sensitivities and critical insights of resisting the flattening forces of a coercive society, I think interrelate with each other in ways that create this undeniably powerful cultural product that influences how children are later defined in the broader mainstream context.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This is a terrific book that makes a very important new contribution to the field and opens up Sendak, who for all of us is such an important figure in many new ways and in many rich ways as well. Thank you very much and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.